Hey everyone, welcome to a new video on the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to set up a guest network using VLANs on your Mikrotik router. This guest network will allow you to put anyone on it using Wi-Fi or cabled into your router using an Ethernet interface. It's going to be completely separate from your main network, and we will set up a few firewall rules to not allow anyone on that guest network to reach anyone on your main network. I just want to also point out that the These Bytes website is up and running, and I've got all of the tutorials on this channel up there, including this one, which will go through everything in depth that I talk about in this video. So if I miss something or you need to check something out, you can go to this blog post. I'll have the link in the description below. Alright, so to get started, this is a fresh default config on this router. I've taken a few things out, but you can pretty much just follow along and adjust your configuration as needed. So first, what we're going to do is set up our LAN network. This is going to be the network that we use internally for management and pretty much anything you want. This is basically the network that the guests are not going to be on. So by default, it's going to have applied a 192.168.88.1/24 network, and it's on our bridge. So what I'm going to do is just go into bridge, and I'm going to rename this to LAN_bridge. And I'm going to take this comment out. This is a default config comment that your default config will add to this bridge automatically. So I'm just going to add a comment here going bridge used for LAN. Okay, that's pretty much it. You'll see now that the interface has changed its name under the IP list, and I'm going to take out the default comment and just call this LAN subnet. Okay, cool. Alright, so that's done now. So now I'm going to set up a DHCP server. If you're reconfiguring your router, you probably already have this set up. So if there's steps in here that I'm including that you don't need to do, then obviously feel free not to do them. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to start at step 0. Okay, so we're going to do DHCP setup. We're going to put this DHCP on our LAN bridge. Going to go next. That's the address space, aka the subnet for the DHCP server to hand out. DHCP network, yep. Okay, so we're going to start handing out addresses from .88.2 all the way up to .88.254. That's fine. DNS doesn't really matter, not connected to the internet in this tutorial. Obviously, if you have set this up and you're using a router that's going out, you may want to change your DNS server or check that out a bit more in depth, or at least time. That's fine. Alright, cool, there we go. So now, I was connecting to this router statically. I'm just going to go into my Wi-Fi adapter, properties, and I'm going to put on the DHCP, and I'm probably going to get kicked. There we go. And we'll cancel and reconnect. I think my Wi-Fi. Just disconnect here, reconnect to get a DHCP lease, and we should connect momentarily. There we go. Alrighty. So next step, that's done. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start setting up our guest network. So we're going to go into interfaces, and we're going to go to VLAN, and we're going to add a new VLAN. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this VLAN on the LAN bridge. I'm also going to go ahead and call this, going to give this the name. So I'm going to call this guest _VLAN _ I'm going to give this VLAN ID of 10. So I'm going to just call that VLAN 10. Guest _VLAN 10, and the VLAN ID will be 10. And then we're going to click OK. Alright, now you can see the guest VLAN has been added, and if we go into our interfaces, you'll see that the guest VLAN is actually attached to this bridge, and that is all we need to do to set up that VLAN. So next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a subnet for this VLAN, so that's going to be the network that our guests are on. So I'm going to go to IP addresses, I'm going to create new, I'm going to just give this a IP of 10.0 .1.1, and it's going to be a /24. Going to add it to the guest VLAN, and you don't need to specify a network, that'll already be done. So if I click apply here, you'll see automatically does that. Okay, so now we've done that. So what we can do next is set up a DHCP server for our guest VLAN. Okay, so we're going to go IP DHCP, and we're going to do the same that we did for the LAN bridge. We're going to do for our DHCP, we're going to do for our guest VLAN. So we're going to go DHCP setup. The only difference here is that instead of going on the instead of going on the LAN bridge, we're going to attach the DHCP server to the guest VLAN. So we're going to click next. That's fine. Next again, and the DNS server again doesn't really matter. But what you could do is you could make this a local DNS server running on the router or externally, or you can just do 1.1.1, which is a Cloudflare external DNS server that you would need an internet connection to reach. But because for the purpose of this tutorial, my router is not connected or has a breakout interface, it's very much immaterial. But you know, if you need to do it, that's what you would do. Next again, and set up successful. Okay, cool. We've got our guest VLAN DHCP server. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up a virtual wireless interface with an SSID broadcast for the guest network. So let's go ahead and do that. I haven't configured the wireless interface yet, so security profiles, it's probably going to be open. So I'm just going to keep this as default. This is going to be the Wi-Fi password for our LAN network. So mode, I'm going to change to dynamic keys, and WPA2, I'm just going to make the appreciate key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'll just unhide passwords here. Okay, cool. So it's going to kick us off the Wi-Fi now. So I'm going to click OK, and you can see we've been kicked. So let's just reconnect here. And I might have to say forget. All right, not that one, this one. Connect. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, and we should be connected now. Because it's got no internet, Windows 10 doesn't want to connect to this, so it's freaking out. It's waiting for an internet connection, but we are connected and we are in. All right, cool. Let's now set up a Wi-Fi password for our guests. You could use the same Wi-Fi password, but obviously that defeats the purpose of having a separate guest network, because guests could just use the same Wi-Fi password to connect to your main network. So we're going to go to where we are now, security profiles. We're going to click on the plus button, and we're going to call this guest underscore Wi-Fi underscore password. There are standard naming conventions that you can follow, etc. It's also a good idea to make sure that whatever you're setting up and adding is easy for the next person to understand. So adding things like comments really helps, especially if there's another like network admin or someone that's working on your network. Gets rid of a lot of questions, and it can save a lot of time in the long run. So we're going to go here in the comments for this security profile, and we're going to go Wi-Fi password that the guests use. Okay, and we're going to go there, and we're going to set the mode to dynamic keys, and we're going to do WPA2, and the appreciate key will just make this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's different from the main one. Obviously this is not a good practice. I'm labbing this. This is not a real network, so I'm not concerned about any of the passwords, but in real world practice, you definitely, well, goes without saying, you definitely want to have more secure passwords than that. All right, so now we've added that. We're going to go onto the Wi-Fi interface, and we're going to now create a virtual wireless interface. But before I do that, because I haven't done this config, I'm just going to set an SSID for my router here. So I'm going to call this main underscore network. Actually, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to call this LAN underscore network. Okay, now we've been disconnected again. obviously. So what we need to do is let the Wi-Fi, there we go, refresh, connect, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, connect, and we should get back into this router when it retries. And 1, there we go. All right, awesome. So we're back in. Click OK. Now let's go ahead and create our virtual wireless interface. All right, something else that I forgot to mention here is if you want your guest network to have no password, then what you can do is you can go onto the security profiles, onto the guest Wi-Fi password that we created, and instead of saying dynamic keys, you can set this to none. That will get rid of any kind of authentication or pre-shared key requirement. That's useful for some guest networks. Some people prefer not to have a Wi-Fi password for their guests. Makes sense because you don't want guests to have to come and ask the whole time for passwords, etc. So yeah, that can make sense in certain environments. Okay, so what we're going to do now is create the virtual wireless interface. Now what this does is it creates a wireless interface that you can connect to, but it's a virtual wireless interface. So you're virtualizing an actual wireless interface, and this is a way to create a second SSID on the same wireless interface. So what we do is we go onto the plus and we say virtual, and then now we have a new virtual wireless interface. So we're going to name this guest. All right, and a lot of the default stuff will be fine. So mode is going to be AP bridge. The master interface is VLAN 1, which is the actual hardware bound interface that we are virtualizing now. Security profile we're going to set to guest Wi-Fi password, and everything else you can basically just leave default. Then under VLAN mode we're going to hit use tag, and we're going to set this to the ID. The VLAN ID is going to be 10 because that's the VLAN ID that we set for our guest VLAN. All right, so then we're going to leave a comment here. We're going to call this comment guest wireless interface, and we're going to hit OK. SSID must be specified for guest AP modes. Oh, I forgot to put in SSID. Okay, I'm going to call this guest, and then we're going to hit OK. All right, cool. There we go. The guest network has been added. So, okay, so now that this virtual wireless interface has been created, we could go into our Wi-Fi scan and we can check to see if we pick it up. And we do. So that's good. But if we connect to here, nothing's going to happen. We're not going to get a DHCP release or anything like that because we haven't done anything further with our VLAN configuration. So let's go ahead and do that now. So what we need to do is we need to go to our bridge and we need to go to ports and just make sure that the virtual wireless LAN is in here as well. So let's go and select that, and that's going to be the guest. And then you'll see here the comment guest wireless interface. Okay, we're going to add that, and we're going to go to VLAN, and we're going to set the PV ID to 10, which is our VLAN ID. Then we're going to click OK. All right. Okay, next. Okay, so now we need to set up a VLAN table on our bridge. And just a quick thing and a quick note, when you're setting up your bridge, just make sure that before you set up your VLAN table, VLAN filtering needs to be disabled, because when you try to configure your VLAN table on your bridge, it's going to start adding a whole bunch of dynamic entries. So we don't want that. We want to disable VLAN filtering for now, and we want to go to VLANs, and in here we're going to set up our VLAN table manually before we enable VLAN filtering. We're going to go on the plus button here to add a new VLAN table, and we're going to add, so we're going to select our LAN bridge. Okay, so if we had multiple bridges, we would select the bridge here. The VLAN ID is going to be 20 because we are handling VLAN 20 traffic specifically here, and our tagged interface is going to be the guest wireless here, this guest wireless interface. All right, and then under that we're going to add another tagged interface, and we're going to make the bridge interface. So LAN bridge is going to be our tagged interface, and then we're going to hit OK. So basically what's happening here is because we've set up our wireless guest network with a VLAN ID of 10, whoops, I just made a mistake here. This needs to be 10. We're not using a VLAN ID of 20, we're using a VLAN ID of 10. My bad. So anyway, as I was saying, because we've set our guest network, our virtual wireless interface to use a tag of a VLAN ID of 10, that means it's tagging its traffic as VLAN 10. So when it gets to the bridge interface, we're basically saying allow VLAN 10 in through these interfaces. Simple as that. And then this is going to be able to find its way to the actual VLAN 10 interface that we set up. Okay, cool. Something else that we can do now is enable VLAN filtering on the bridge. So we're going to hit admit all on the bridge, and then because we made a change on our bridge and we've now enabled VLAN filtering, we will be able to use our guest network. Something else that we can do is go onto our guest wireless LAN and change it to admit only VLAN tagged. Alright, cool. So what we can do to test this now is we can actually go onto our computer and scan for wireless, and what we can do is connect to our guest network. Right now we're getting DHCP from our LAN network, so we should be getting a 192.168.88 dot whatever address. So I'll go in IP config and we can check here. Yeah, there we go, wireless LAN adapter 192.168.88.253. So what we can do, and we know we're getting DHCP from that, so we can connect our guest network now. It's going to ask us for the password, so we made that 123456789. We're going to click next. We can do that, that's fine. Okay, now let's test if we're getting DHCP from our guest network. So we're already back in the router, so I assume this is working. Just double check it didn't reconnect. It's on guest. Okay, so what we're going to do is go IP config here, and there we go. You can see I'm now getting a DHCP lease from our guest network's DHCP server, which means that our VLAN is working perfectly fine now. However, there's a couple of things that you're going to want to do, which I'm not going to cover all of it in this video, but there's a couple of things that you're going to want to do to get some better security, including not allowing this guest VLAN to access stuff on your actual network. So if I go ahead and I ping the LAN bridge, for example, I'm going to go through the router, we'll pass this traffic through. So I'm going to go ping to 168.88.1, which is the bridge IP, and you can see we're getting a reply, which means our traffic is traversing from our guest VLAN to our actual main network, which, depending on what you want to do, but in terms of actually segregating this network, you can see that that's not working. So let's go and sort that out real quick. It's a very easy thing to do. Okay, so in order to stop that from happening, what we can do is we can basically just tell the router anything coming from our guest subnet going to our LAN subnet, it needs to drop. So any traffic that it sees coming from that side, it's going to drop. So one way to do that is to go into IP firewall and create a new filter. So the chain is going to be forward. The source address will be our VLAN subnet, so it will be 10.0.1, and we're going to address the entire subnet. So instead of putting a specific IP address in that subnet, we're going to put a 0, so .0/24. Okay, so now the router is going to see any IP address in this entire subnet for the source address, and then for the destination address, it's going to be the LAN subnet, so 192.168.88.0/24. Okay, so we're going to go action and we're going to do drop, and then we're going to click OK, and we've got this rule now. So this is going to stop any traffic going across our VLAN into our LAN. So to test this, I'm going to connect my phone to our LAN network. Okay, so I've just connected my phone to the LAN network. So there it is. Alright, so now if I go onto my computer and I try and ping my phone, which is that IP address. Okay, so we go across to our CMD and let's double check. Okay, we are on the VLAN subnet, so we can ping 192.168.88.252, and you can see that none of our traffic is going through. It's getting timed out, so which means it's dropping, and we can check here the byte counter on our rule. You can see it's going up. So that's how we know this rule is working. But let's go one step further and disable this rule. We can see that our ping starts working again. Now we enable it again, and there we go, it's busy timing out. Alright, so that's your basic VLAN config for the wireless. So if you want to add an Ethernet port, it's very simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our ports and we're going to click on we're going to click on Ethernet 4 on the port, and we're going to change its VLAN, its private VLAN ID to 10, and then we're going to go to VLANs, edit our VLAN 10 table entry, and we're just going to add ETH4 to the tagged interface as well. So yeah, so that's how you would add an Ethernet port to it, and you can do this to any number of ports. So we can test that now, and let me just plug my laptop, let me just plug my computer into port 4 on the router. So let's go into network and internet settings and change adapter options. Let's disable this and enable that, and we should get a DHCP lease. Let me just check if I've got this statically assigned. Okay, and now you can see here on the DHCP leases table that I've got a lease handed out to me for my computer over ETH4. So let's just check that out. Guest 2, and let's go to ipconfig, and let's look for our Ethernet adapter, and there it is. So it's getting an IP address 10.0.1.3 for the VLAN interface, and so that's all working perfectly. And then just an extra step for added security is what you want to do to stop anyone on your guest VLAN from attempting to log into your router here, or any other equipment on your network for that matter, is just add a simple rule for the input. So new filter rule, general, and then you go input source address 10.0.1.0/24, and the action will be drop. So we're going to add that in, hit OK, bring it to the top here, and now you'll see we're still connected, and that is because we are connected to the router through the MAC address. So if we just close this here, open up Winbox, and we try to go to the router's IP address, it's not going to let us in. Okay, so the reason that you can still log in through the MAC address is because the Winbox MAC server is set to accept input from any interface. So that's going to allow your VLAN traffic to come in through the MAC address, which is a bit of a security hole. So to fix that, you're going to go to Tools, Mac Server, and then you're going to look at Mac Winbox Server, and you're just going to put the allowed interface list as none. Okay, and for the sake of this video, I'm just going to leave it at that, and then that's going to stop people from being able to get into your router through Winbox using the MAC address. And you can disable do the same thing for the Mac Telnet server. Just set that to none, and the Mac Ping server, disable that, and then that's going to stop people from being able to access your router through the VLAN interface. Now there's a lot of config that you can still do, and there's a lot of tightening up of security and all kinds of user controls that you can set up now. This video is not going to cover any of that because it's not the point of this video, and it's not really the scope that I'm intending to reach with this video. But if you do want that in the future, I can make another video, and I'm sure we're going to cover lots of those topics in the coming videos. So yeah, that's going to do it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and again, you can go to the These Bytes website and check out the written guide for this video. I will put the link in the description. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you find this useful. I would really appreciate that.